This is the whole. By the way, this is the 28th Division book that shows them coming from England and going in. They went in at Omaha as well, and let's see. This is when they go to Paris. They marched in the Paris Liberation March, and over here is let's see, what's the name? And here we go. Can't find a German city here.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Hurtgen campaign was one of the big ones. The 28th Division, it turns out, was on one of the unfortunate divisions of the European campaign. I think they were wiped out officially 3 times during, and some people said it was because of poor leadership. I don't think that was the case. I think our leadership was as good as anybody else's. We were just unfortunate to get into those situations where the American Army could not overcome the German strategy at that particular time. Anyway, this was the eastern edge of the Hurtgen Forest, and it leads out onto a plain where the Autobahn went north and south, and I used to remember the names of the towns which I was looking for here, and I couldn't find it. Oh, wait a minute. This is only half of it. No, it isn't. That's the whole thing. I should have looked at this before I came.
That's all right.
Anyway, the assignment of the 28th Division was to cross this plain to the first town on the Autobahn and take the Autobahn. And of course the Germans didn't like this at all. And when we were replacing all of the casualties that the 28th had just in the previous few days. So there were, I think I read in here that there was about more than 100 replacements to the 2nd Battalion on this particular day. So they had more. My company had more people than more replacements than they needed. So the excess of which I was one, and I was still carrying my BAR, by the way, still listed as a BAR man. They assigned us to the company headquarters and said, you will guard the ammunition dump tomorrow morning when we jump off and go across the plain to this small town. So the next morning, that night, they said, you go out and you need to dig yourself a foxhole. And they told us where to dig, and I started digging, and I had this horrible odor overcome me, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and I dug my foxhole, and as I got down into my foxhole, the odor became stronger, heavier than air. So I spent my first night in combat, as it turned out, in the presence of a dead German soldier. I had thrown the dirt partially over him when I dug the hole. So I was not in a particularly good mood at that time, and of course overwhelmed by the reality that this was it, but grateful for the fact that I wasn't in the active part of the attack. Well, shortly after dawn, the Germans started bombarding, shelling the forest, and even after the troops left and started to cross the plain, there still was very severe shelling, and we were sort of left at our own devices. And naturally, when that happens in the Army, a poker game starts, and we were in a underground bunker playing poker, and I wasn't a big poker fan, but joined in anyway. And I happened to be sitting with my back to the opening of the bunker, and a round came in and landed close enough so the concussion of the blast sent me across the poker game into the opposite wall of the thing. So that ended the poker game. And shortly after that, things got pretty hectic and hazy at that point. But the next thing I remember was a lieutenant coming back and saying, "Okay, I want every one of you guys to get your rifle and 2 belts of ammunition and follow me up to the front. There's been a breakthrough. The army is our army is retreating, and we've got to hold this town." And so about 25 of us, and there's a picture in here of I think it might be that operation. It's the label of the picture is the reinforcements were rapidly brought up to the front. And I can't find myself in that picture, but I'm sure it was in that vicinity. Anyway, we got halfway across this plain, which was about 1.5 miles, 2 miles to the town, and the Germans started zeroing in on our little column, and the lieutenant said, "Find cover." And there was a very shallow ditch on the side of this road, and then when I hit the ditch, I noticed there was a mound of dirt just a little bit further off from the road. So I headed for it, and lo and behold, it was a hole. So I jumped in, and unfortunately, it wasn't a hole meant for human occupation, but for human feces. And I spent it seemed like hours and hours in there. And I was up to about above my knees, I remember, in liquid waste. And they had to pull me out because it was too high for me to crawl out. And we went on into the town, and by the time we got to the town, I was close behind the lieutenant. He and I and a couple of others were the only ones left of this 25 or 30 people. And he said, "I don't know where our troops are, but let's head for town center and see if we can locate it." We got near the town center and discovered that we were entering a tank battle. American tanks were on one side of the village and German tanks were on the other, and they were firing through the village both ways. So that some shells were hitting buildings in the town, and there was nobody around. And we got close to the town center, so we could see the town center down the street we were going, and we saw a couple of soldiers, and the lieutenant said, "Oh, no, we're not going any further. Those aren't American soldiers. So our lines must be back here somewhere." So he started going into houses and trying to find them. And he finally found a house where there were American soldiers in the basement. And it happened to be a house where I don't know whether it was an American tank or a German tank, had lowered their sights so that they were firing right through this building. And I spent the night in this basement, and it turns out it was my company, partly of my company, and that's when I officially joined that company. And we were there for 2 or 3 days, and the next day I was assigned to a machine gun emplacement at the end of the wall of the local school, in which place the local residents had dug a hole and put their valuables in the hole. And we used the hole as cover for this machine gun nest, which overlooked a small valley, which the Germans kept trying to come across to enter the town, and we kept firing to. So I became a water-cooled machine gun, 30 caliber machine gun gunner, and with just an hour's training.
Can you tell me when you were in this hole for human waste, and how quickly did you carry that with you, or did you change? Did you have an opportunity? And
I don't remember it being offensive to myself or to my buddies, but it was about a month before I got a change of clothing.
Yes.
And it took General Eisenhower to do that, because we went to a shower point, they called it, and we got new clothing and a shower. And at this opportunity, General, what was his name? The one with the pistols and the dog.
Patton?
Yeah, Patton took this opportunity to address the troops. So he had the troops standing out in the rain and cold weather while he expounded on something or other. And Eisenhower arrived, and he immediately went up to the front and said, "Thank you, General, dismissed." So I did get clean clothing at that point.
Were you in Patton's, one of his divisions?
We moved around a lot. Yes,
okay.
we were just about in every army on the front at one time or another. As I say, there were more of the 28th Division in the cemetery at Omaha Beach than any other unit in the U.S. Army. And when my wife and I went there, they treated me royally because of that.
Is that right?
They gave us a personal tour.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt. Continue your military experience now.
Okay, where was I?
You were in.
Oh, okay. We were.
You were gunning 30 caliber now.
Yeah. Okay.
In
And
the valley.
this is where I told you that the Air Force interviewed me about interaction with the Air Force. During that time, they called in a bombing run from the Air Force to try to dislodge the Germans from their half of the town. And unfortunately, some of the pilots couldn't tell east from west or north from south, and they bombed the wrong half of the town. And that night, we got word that we were being relieved, and I forgot what unit it was, came in and took our place, and we were sent to a remote area of the front in Luxembourg, a few short miles from Malmedy in St. Vith in Luxembourg. Wampampak, something, Wamp, I can't remember the name of the town. It was again in the forest, and they had dug out large bunkers with and they were truly bunkers because they were filled with beds. And there was a small area, and it had about, I think, one squad, about 12 people to a bunker. And that was the front line, and we essentially were resting and getting to know one another. We were just going through routine drilling and sending out patrols. And during that time, we realized that the Germans were actually building up forces on opposite us, and we sent that message forward, but apparently it wasn't taken in the right context, because that's where the first breakthrough of the German offensive started in December. And on that morning, it was company Jeep that was hit as one of the first incidences of that. And of course, we got the order to attack, and the Aue River was between us and Germany. So we had to cross the Aue River to hit the Siegfried Line, which was on the other side of the, so there was a valley, steep valley that the Aue River ran through, and the Siegfried Line was up on the hill on the German side. And we followed a road down over the hill to a little inn at a bridge that went across the Aue River, and then up the other side. And halfway up the other side, we encountered fire, so we automatically went into the battle attack movement, fire and movement it's called, which worked very well. Only time I ever got a chance to use all those hours of training in fire and movement, which is each individual goes forward so many steps and hits the ground when he sees cover, and you alternate up and down the line so that there's, and you keep moving forward. And this worked so beautifully, it confounded the Germans who had a strong advantage because they were up higher than us, looking down through this sparsely populated forest. So we took this group of Germans very easily, but we had no place to send them. Because we didn't have any backup, because everything had collapsed at that particular time. And we were only one company out of our battalion. The rest of them stayed on in this rest area, and they were hit later in that day. And we spent a couple of days. Time is one thing that I don't have a good handle on, whenever one of these situations comes up. But at that point, I was a radio man. I had gotten rid of my BAR, and I volunteered as a radio man because I figured, well, that's in headquarters, and that's a good soft job. No way. Particularly when you put they had two types of antennas that they put on the radio at that time. There was a regular cylindrical one, and then there was, when you were in rough territory, you had a flat one that was much higher, and it was about 1 inch wide, and it was, when you walked, it waved at the enemy, saying, "Here I am," you know. And the Germans always responded to when they saw this. So anyway, since I was in company headquarters, and we were camped in the Maginot Line in one of the German bunkers, so we were looking out the back door at the enemy, and we put the company out in front of us on a hillside between us and where we could detect a lot of mechanized movement. And that night we got word that we were supposed to pull back to our original position, and the captain looked around and said, "Okay, somebody's got to go up to the front line and tell them what the orders are." So he looked right at me and said, "It's your turn," and sent me out. And he said, "Okay, you take such and such an azimuth, compass direction, till you hit the potato field. You count so many rows of potatoes, and then you go at such and such on a different azimuth across that potato field, and you'll hit the end of the line." And at that moment, it was pitch dark. And so I went up to the potato field and had to feel around. I couldn't see. So I tried to count the number of rows and realized that this wasn't right, because right in front of me was the woods, and I knew that potatoes don't grow in woods very well. So I stopped and looked around, and I could hear somebody talking, and lo and behold, it was not English. So I retreated, but apparently they heard me, and they fired a phosphorus shell up in the air, and it exploded right over my head and knocked me to the ground, and I still have a reminder of that. And anyway, I went back to the edge of the potato field and I hit the end of that line right on the button, and we were supposed to leave at midnight or some appropriate hour to go down the hill, cross the bridge, and up to the other side. And by this time, the moon had come out, full moon, and it was almost like daylight. And as we walked down the hill towards the river, we could see that there were some vehicles parked at the little inn, and they happened to be German vehicles. And they weren't tanks, they were personnel carriers. So we surmised that there was at least some German officers spending the night at the inn. And the inn was right beside the bridge. So what do you do? Do you attack the inn? Do you try to sneak by? Do you swim across the river? What do you do? Well, anyway, they decided to do the bravado thing. They would just march down the hill, across the bridge, and up the other side. And we started down the hill, and everybody was, you could actually hear people stepping onto the ground. It was so quiet, except for one thing. The person carrying the water-cooled machine gun had taken the cap off from the cooling tank, and the cap was swinging and hitting so every step it would be bing, bing, and they stopped that in a hurry. And we got down to the bridge, and we very quietly crossed the bridge, and here was these, I think there were two, I'm not sure at this point, personnel carriers sitting there. Nobody, apparently everybody was asleep. So the whole company crossed the bridge and up the other side, and I remember turning around as we were almost to the top of the hill and looked back down, and I could see this long line of 2x2 still crossing, the last of them crossing the bridge, and no motion from the bridge. And we got back to our haven and found that they had orders to pull back. And by this time, chaos had really set in, and the orders were to try to find regimental headquarters, but regimental headquarters was pulling out, and we were supposed to go back into Belgium any way we could. And we spent about a week moving at night and hiding during the day, because during that time, as everyone knows, the Germans had pseudo-American forces in the field giving misdirection and so on and so forth, and we hit a lot of those. And I remember one particular instance. We picked up a Free French guide to go to the next point, and he took us to a farmhouse, and the farm family gave us a dinner, and this was the headquarters company, so there was probably 10 or 15 of us.
Okay.
And this French family, we knew were short on food, and or thought that, I mean, we surmised they were, but we happened to have some oranges with us, and we gave them the oranges, and that was the highlight of their year, was the fact that they had not seen oranges since the war had started. Anyway, we finally got through the lines on Christmas Eve. The 82nd Airborne had a special drive forward to get us out, and about that time I got jaundice, and went to the hospital. And that was pretty much the end of my combat experiences.
Tell a little bit, you were injured. A phosphorus shell, you say. Was that bleeding when you...
I remember it was quite a large piece of metal embedded in my cheek. There still is something there.
There is.
Well, you can see there's a slight...
Yeah.
But after the war, it festered, and a lot of this, the body pushed it out. Okay. So it diminished in size. But I was not written up for a Purple Heart. As a matter of fact, later we joined the campaign to liberate Colmar.
And the Colmar Pocket?
Yeah, the Colmar Pocket. And we were assigned to go in through the mountains. And another experience, we started up this hill clearing, and we got out in the middle of the clearing and realized it was a trap. There were machine guns on both sides of the clearing and machine guns at the top, so they were firing at us from 3 directions, and they pinned us down. But just before that, there was a farmhouse down near the bottom of the field that we were approaching, and we saw 2 German soldiers come out of this farmhouse, and the captain said, pin him down. So I had a carbine at that time I was carrying, I still had the radio. And so I fired at this one figure and I hit him, and he went down. And several people that were in the farmhouse then ran out of the farmhouse and up over the hill and disappeared. So we went forward and got into the middle of this hill, and we hit this ambush. And while we were laying there, I could hear this fellow that I had shot groaning. And after it seemed like an hour or two, it really got on my nerves. I mean, I'm the reason that this guy is dying, you know. Yeah. But the first time it really hit me emotionally that this was serious business. This wasn't fun and games. And anyway, we marched along a long time that day or the next day, and it was cold by this time, and my feet got wet, and I think I had partially frozen my feet because my feet swelled up and I couldn't put my boots on. So I just had a pair of overshoes, and I filled the overshoes with newspaper and just wore newspaper in my boots. And the end of that day, we were at another farmhouse, and we were sleeping in the loft, and I recall parts of that night of having German tanks come at me. And in the morning I discovered that I had raved and ranted all night long. And in the morning I felt like I was a dish rag. I was supposed to be on KP, and they excused me from KP and assigned me to Jeep duty. I became a Jeep driver. But again, nothing was filed on this. I wasn't sent back as a casualty. I just was excused from extra duty.
How did they treat you for your, when you say you got a jaundice?
Yes.
What did they do?
The main thing is they isolated us. This was a hospital in France. They isolated us, and we were supposed to eat huge amounts of hard candy every day, which after about 2 days, that does it. So we found a crack in the floor, and we poured all the candy down this crack in the floor. And an incident at that.
How long did that take you to recover?
About a month.
Okay.
And during that time, since we were isolated, we ate in a separate section of the cafeteria and had an early time to eat. Oh, one day I was doing something, I forgot what, something probably very important, but and I missed the lineup for cafeteria, so I was late. And by the time I got to the cafeteria, the general walking population of the hospital were in line, so I was bucking the line. And I got about halfway up the line, and one soldier stepped out and said, "Hey, you don't do that here." And I said, "Well, this is a situation," and I explained to him what was going on. And he didn't give up, he followed me. And when I got to the end of my line, I stepped into the line behind the last guy in my line, and he stood there. And he said, "Don't I know you?" And I said, "I don't think so." And at that point I was saying, "I hope not." You know? It turned out it was a fellow I went to high school with.
Is that right?
A very close friend of my family's.
Oh, very good.
And he said, "Well, I just got a letter from my mother saying that you're missing, and they haven't heard from you in several months." And I've been writing, but
they never got that.
They never got the letters. Never did get the letters. As a matter of fact, when I finally got home, first words my father said to me, a very emotional man, you know. He said, "Why the hell didn't you write?" His first words to me when I came home. But anyway, when I got out of the hospital, the division was stationed at a small military cavalry high school, which was a compound, and they were discharging agricultural farmer German soldiers to get them back into life. So we were the guard part of that.
Would you just time-wise? I just want to find that you were in the Hurtgen Forest. You got in, and then you got into this battle, or you moved up to where the Battle of the Bulge was taking place.
Yeah, well, this was the Battle of the Bulge, and it's more than St. Vith and Malmedy.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
I mean, it was a whole area.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the day of the snowstorm at St. Vith, when the famous tank battle took place, we inadvertently walked into that. So we skirted it and got the hell out of there as fast as we could.
It amazes me that you were able to avoid capture when you were so close to the Germans and so on, and you...
As I say, we had Free French guiding us, and I never met any of these Free French, but every night there would be somebody, and we would take the back roads, and
Is that right?
And they seemed to recognize when we encountered some of these pseudo-Americans, and about every crossroads we came to, they would rearrange the signs and put them back in the right direction. That was one of the main things that the Germans did non-combatively at that point. And as a matter of fact, when I joined 3M, no, it wasn't 3M, it was Westinghouse. Right after I got my PhD. There was a fellow who was he was about my father's age, had been a small factory owner in Germany, and he happened to be Jewish, and he married an Austrian wife. He was displaced and hunted down by the Gestapo for some reason, which we never knew. So he fled and joined the Free French, spent the war hiding in rural France. And I think one of the things that he used to do was guide parachutists and so forth through the underground back to, but he would never talk about it. But he was an artist, and he gave me before he retired, he gave me a picture of a rural farmhouse, and told me that he used to visit these farmhouses on Snowy Island. Maybe my unit was one of the units that he guided, and I keep that
Sure.
that picture on my desk.